There is a room in this farmhouse that nobody knew existed. Not Clara. Not Clara's mother before her. Not the county assessor who walked these rooms in 1987, clipboard in hand, noting the cracked plaster and the fieldstone foundation and the single surviving pane of wavy glass in the parlor window. Nobody. The room was behind the east wall of the cellar, sealed with mortar that matched the original foundation, so precisely that it looked like it had always been solid. 104 years of silence behind 8 inches of limestone and sand. Marta Voss died in March of 2003. She was 104 years old. She had lived in this farmhouse in Rooks County, Kansas, since 1911, when she was 12 years old and already carrying something she would never fully put down. When Clara finally broke through that wall in 2019, she found her grandmother's whole life inside it. Not furniture, not money, not the kind of things people hide in walls. She found drawings, thousands of them, floor to ceiling, stacked in bundles tied with cotton twine, layered in cedar, and wrapped in oilcloth as though Marta had known exactly how long they needed to last when Clara plugged it in. She found a journal written in 3 languages, only one of which Clara recognized, and she found a name written on the inside cover of the journal in Marta's careful, old-fashioned hand. The name was not Marta Voss. What Clara found in that room, and what Marta recorded on those tapes, and what Marta drew every single day for 90 years, points towards something that the official history of the Orphan Trains has never been able to explain. Not just the children who were lost, but the world those children were taken from. Marta was 7 years old when she was put on a train in New York City in 1906. She was supposed to be placed with a family somewhere in Kansas. That was the program. That was always the program. But somewhere between New York and the place she was supposed to end up, she saw something that changed everything. She got off that train on her own, in the dark, and she ran. She never stopped running from it. Not really. Not even after 90 years in this house, surrounded by the Kansas wind and the smell of wheat and the specific quality of light that comes off the plains in October. She drew it every day because she was afraid she would forget. She recorded her voice because she was afraid nobody would believe her. She hid it in the wall because she was afraid of what would happen if the wrong person found it before the right person did. Clara is the right person, and now you are too. The farmhouse sits back from the county road about 300 yards, at the end of a gravel track that the mail carrier stopped using sometime in the early 90s. The land around it is flat in every direction, the kind of flat that makes the sky feel enormous and slightly threatening, like something too large for a person to properly understand. The grass is winter brown in the way that Kansas grass is always winter brown, even in September, a pale gold that catches the light and bends in the wind in long, slow waves. The house itself is 2 stories of pale limestone, quarried from the creek bed a half-mile east. The same stone as the cellar walls, the same stone behind which Marta sealed everything she knew for nearly a century. The porch sags on the south side where a beam has finally given way. The windows are small and set deep into the walls. The way windows were built, when glass was expensive and cold, was a serious enemy. Inside, the rooms smell of cedar and old paper and something else, something harder to name, mineral, almost. Like dry stone after rain hasn't touched it for a long time. The floorboards are original, wide plank pine, that has darkened over 112 years to something close to walnut. They flex under your weight in places, they hold in others. The parlor still has Marta's furniture. Clara hasn't changed it. A horsehair settee upholstered in dark green, a lamp with a milk glass shade, a braided rug in faded reds and blues on the mantel above the fireplace, 3 objects arranged with obvious care, a small wooden box with a brass clasp, a river stone, worn smooth on one side and rough on the other, and a photograph in an oval frame. The photograph is not of Marta. It shows a building, ornate building, photographed from below, so that it rises into the frame at an angle that makes it look almost vertical. The architecture is extraordinary, something between Byzantine and something else, something without a name in the standard vocabulary of architectural history. Columns that are wider at the top than at the bottom. Windows that are not quite semicircular and not quite pointed. Decorative elements along the roofline that repeat in a pattern so precise it seems almost mechanical. Clara doesn't know where the building is. She doesn't know who took the photograph. She doesn't know why her grandmother kept it on the mantel for 90 years. She knows, because Marta's recordings tell her, that Marta remembered seeing buildings like this when she was very young. Before the train, before New York, before whatever happened to the child who had some other name on the inside cover of that journal. She knows that in Marta's drawings, these buildings appear over and over, thousands of times. And she knows, because of what Marta said on the tapes, that Marta believed these buildings were not what we were told they were. Clara is 47 years old. She has her grandmother's eyes, the same pale gray, almost silver, that appears in the few photographs taken of Marta in her later years. She keeps the tapes in a climate-controlled cabinet in the room that was once the dining room. She plays them on the original machine, a woolen sack reel-to-reel that she had repaired by a specialist in Wichita. The first time she played the tapes, she sat in the dark for a long time afterward. The first thing she says, Clara tells you, is, "I am going to tell you things that cannot be verified. I am going to tell you things that I saw myself. If you find this before the right time, burn it. If you find it at the right time, you will know what to do." Clara pauses. She's sitting in Marta's parlor, in the horsehair chair, her hands folded in her lap, the way Marta's always were in photographs. "I think this is the right time," she says quietly. The tapes run for 11 hours total. Marta recorded them in 1987 and 1988, when she was 88 years old. Her voice on the recordings is clear and deliberate and without the performance of age, the kind of voice that has stopped caring about how it sounds and cares only about being understood. It comes through the speaker with a slight hiss of age beneath it, but the words are clean. "I don't remember my name before the train. I remembered it for a long time, and then one day it was gone, like the word for something you haven't thought about since you were a child. What I remember is what I saw. And what I saw on that train, I have never told anyone while they could do something to stop me from telling it." A pause. Wind somewhere near the microphone. The sound of something settling in the walls. "There were 114 children on my train. I counted them. I counted them every day because counting was the only thing that felt solid. By the time we reached the Mississippi, there were 91. 23 children had been taken off the train at night, at stops that were not on any schedule anyone showed us. I watched from the window. I watched them taken down the steps by men in good coats, not the charitable society men who rode with us during the day. Different men, quiet men, men who moved like they were used to not being noticed." Clara stops the tape. She looks at you. She describes the children who were taken, she says. She describes them very specifically. Clara has a notebook. She reads from it, tall for their age, always taller than expected. Eyes that were pale, sometimes very pale, sometimes silver. Hair that was dark or white, nothing in between. Unusual physical proportion, she says. Long limbs, broad through the shoulders, even in children who were very thin from not eating well. She says they walked differently. She says she noticed it from the first day, the way certain children seemed to take up more space than their size warranted. She closes the notebook. She says she knew she was one of them. And she says that's why she ran. The wind moves across the prairie outside the parlor window. The pale light falls through the old glass and bends the way old glass bends light, turning the room slightly amber. Marta ran because she understood something that a 7-year-old child should not have been able to understand. She understood that the children who were being taken off the train were not being taken to families. They were being taken somewhere else entirely, and she understood this because of what she remembered from before the train, what she remembered from the world that came before everything she was supposed to forget. 3 months after Clara played those tapes for the first time, she got a phone call from a man she had never met. His name was Emil Hartley. He was 91 years old. He lived in a nursing facility in Concordia, Kansas, 60 miles east. He had read a small article in the local paper about Clara's discovery, the kind of vague article that mentions a historical find without being specific enough to matter. He needed to be specific. It needed to be specific. Emil Hartley is still alive. He is sitting in Marta's parlor now in the same horsehair chair where Clara always sits, because that is the chair where the light is best, and Emil's eyes are not what they were. He came with his daughter, who is 63, and keeps touching his elbow in the way children touch elderly parents when they're uncertain about what they might say. Emil doesn't seem uncertain about anything. He is a small man, shorter than you'd expect from the presence he carries, the hands of someone who spent a lifetime in physical work, and he folds them in his lap with the same deliberateness that Clara has and that Marta had in her photographs. "My grandmother came on a train from New York in 1903, he says. She was 9. She was placed with a family in Jewell County, and she stayed there until she married. And then she stayed in Kansas until she died. She never talked about the train. Her whole life, she never talked about it." He stops, looks at the mantel, at the photograph of the building. "Except once," he says. "She was dying. Pneumonia. I was 15. I sat with her through the night, and she talked." Emil was born in 1933. His grandmother, Inge, died in 1948. She was 54 years old. She talked about the train, he says. She talked about the night they stopped somewhere outside a city. She didn't know what city, and men came and walked through the cars with lanterns, looking at the children, looking at them like, she said, like they were looking for something in particular. He reaches into his jacket pocket and produces a small piece of paper, folded many times. He unfolds it with care. She wrote this down for me, he says. That same night, she made me hold the paper, and she read it to me, and she said, "You keep this. You don't show it to anyone until someone asks about the trains who isn't from the government and isn't from the church." She was very specific about that. He holds the paper toward Clara, who takes it gently. On it, in the shaking handwriting of a dying woman, is a list, 8 characteristics, written in German, which was Emil Hartley's first language. Clara has it translated now. She reads the translated now. She reads the translated aloud. Tall for age. Light eyes, especially gray or green. Wide through the shoulders. Long fingers longer than the palm. Unusual coloring. Dark or white, not medium. Low voice for age. Calm in crisis. Memory for patterns and numbers without effort. That's what they were selecting for, Emil says. That's what she saw them looking for, those men with their lanterns, walking through the cars in the middle of the night. He folds the paper carefully and puts it back in his pocket, like they already knew. Like somewhere underneath, they recognized something about those men that she didn't. Like they were going somewhere familiar. Emil looks at his hands. My grandmother was not taken. She didn't match the list. She was small and dark-eyed and sharp-boned, and nobody looked at her twice. She said she felt grateful her whole life, and she said she felt guilty her whole life about feeling grateful. His daughter puts her hand on his elbow. She said she never found out where those children went. He says. She said she asked once. She asked one of the society workers, a woman who rode with them during the day and kept a ledger. She said the woman went very still when she asked. Very still. And then she said, those children were placed with special families. That's all you need to know. Emil looks at the photograph on the mantle. He looks at it for a long time. My grandmother drew that building, he says finally. Not exactly that one. Similar ones. She drew them sometimes when she thought nobody was watching, and she put the paper away, and she never explained it. Something goes very quiet in the room. Clara looks at Emil. Emil looks at the photograph. She remembered those buildings, he says. From before the train, she didn't know why she remembered them. She had been very young, but she remembered. The pattern that is forming in this farmhouse, in this parlor, in the space between Marta's recordings and Emil's grandmother's list, demands a context that goes back further than the trains themselves. The Orphan Trains ran from 1854 to 1929. In those 75 years, the Children's Aid Society and the Catholic Home Bureau and a dozen other organizations relocated somewhere between 200,000 and 250,000 children from the cities of the eastern seaboard to rural homes across the Midwest and the South. The program was called, officially, the Emigration of Vagrant and Destitute Children. It was described as charitable. It was described as necessary. It was described as the best available solution to the problem of urban child poverty. That description is not entirely false, but there is a part of the story that appears nowhere in the official accounts, nowhere in the charity records, nowhere in the retrospective celebrations of the program that were published in centennial editions of local newspapers from Nebraska to Texas. There is a part that appears only in what people like Marta preserved behind walls, and what people like Inge wrote on pieces of paper that they made their grandchildren hold. To understand what Marta saw on that train, you have to go back to where the trains began. You have to go to New York. The distribution centers for the Orphan Trains were located on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, in buildings that no longer exist. The Brace Memorial Lodging House on Rivington Street, the Girls' Lodging House on St. Mark's Place. These were the gathering points, the places where children were bathed and clothed and sorted and assigned to trains. The word sorted appears in the charity records. It appears as a neutral administrative term. Children were sorted by age, by health, by sex, by religious background, to ensure appropriate placement. That is the official meaning of sorted. Clara has a letter. She found it in the sealed room, tucked inside the back cover of Marta's journal. It is written in English, on letterhead from the Children's Aid Society, dated September 1904. It is addressed to no one. It begins, for the record which will not be kept in the standard files. She reads it now, sitting in the parlor, while Emil listens. The selection process for the Special Placement Program operates separately from the General Emigration Program and is not to be discussed with general staff or with the charitable donors who fund the immigration work. Children identified for special placement are to be marked in the ledger with a double entry. The criteria for identification are as follows, and then the letter lists the same 8 characteristics that Inge wrote down in German in 1948, the same 8 that Emil has in his pocket. Word for word, 44 years apart. 2 women who never met, who could not have communicated, who were separated by half a century. The same 8 characteristics. Special placement, Clara says. She sets the letter down. There are no records of where the special placements went. The double-entry children disappear from the charity ledgers completely, not transferred, not recorded as placed, simply absent, present in one entry, gone in the next. 250,000 children made the journey on the Orphan Trains over 75 years. Nobody knows exactly how many had the double entry. Nobody knows because the second ledgers were never found. Marta knew she had the entry. She saw it herself, she says on the tape. She slipped out of her bunk at night when the society worker was asleep, and she found the ledger, and she saw her name written twice. She did not know what it meant. She was 7, but she knew, in the way that certain children know things before they have the language for them, that she did not want to find out. She was out of that train car before dawn. She was walking west through Kansas before the sun came up. She never stopped. Back in the parlor, the letter lies on the table between you. Emil is looking at it. He is very still in the way that old men are still when something has confirmed what they always suspected but could never prove. My grandmother knew, he says quietly. She knew there was a second list. He looks at Clara. Your grandmother knew what was on it, he says. And she knew she was on it. And she ran. He looks out the window at the winter prairie. I've been trying to understand this my whole life, he says. Since I was 15 years old and sitting with a dying woman who was trying to tell me something important. 66 years of not quite knowing what she was trying to say. He pauses. I think I understand now. The pattern only becomes visible when you follow the money and the buildings instead of the people. The Orphan Trains operated between 1854 and 1929. That span of years brackets something that mainstream historians discuss in a very different context. The systematic demolition and reconstruction of American cities. Chicago after the 1871 fire. Baltimore after the 1904 fire. San Francisco after the 1906 earthquake. City after city, rebuilt in the decade following a catastrophic event. Rebuilt in a style that architectural historians call Beaux-Arts, or simply Victorian civic. Grand, symmetrical, monumental buildings with columns and domes, and elaborate decorative programs that required a level of craft and material sophistication that the rebuilding cities claimed to have produced in less than a decade. The photograph on Marta's mantle is not of a Beaux-Arts building, though it resembles one superficially. Look more closely at the proportions, at the decorative elements along the roofline, at the way the columns taper in the wrong direction. This is something older than the 1870s, something that the new construction of the rebuilding American cities was imitating, not creating. Marta's drawings, all thousands of them, are of buildings like this one. She drew them from memory. She drew them because she had seen them as a child before the train, in a world that she was supposed to forget, in a world that she believed with complete conviction until the day she died at 104 years old, had not ended naturally, but had been ended deliberately. The children with the double entry in the ledger were not being placed with special families. They were being taken back to whatever remained of that world. They were being taken to ensure that whatever remained of that world could be found and finished. Marta was not certain which. She spent 90 years trying to determine which. The detour from this farmhouse to Chicago is brief, because it has to be. What happened in Chicago matters enormously to what Marta believed and what the drawings in the sealed room reveal. But the evidence from Chicago is fragmentary, and it lives primarily in another woman's testimony, and that woman is not here to give it in person. Her name was Dr. Renata Sorge. She was a professor of architectural history at a university in the Midwest. She is no longer a professor. She is no longer at that university. But before we come to what happened to her, you need to understand what she found. The 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago was built on 400 acres of former swamp and sandflat on the city's south lakefront. The buildings constructed for it were temporary, built of a material called staff, a mixture of cement and plaster and jute fiber, over wooden frames. They were intended to last 6 months. After the fair closed, most of them were demolished. Others burned. By 1896, the White City, as it was known, was gone. That is the official account, that the White City was a temporary confection, built fast and torn down faster. a stage set for a world that briefly gathered and then dispersed. Dr. Sorge spent 12 years studying the photographs, the engineering documents, and the demolition records of the 1893 World's Fair. What she found in those demolition records is what ended her career. The demolition timelines don't add up. The photographs of the buildings before and after don't match. There are structures visible in the pre-demolition photographs that do not appear in any construction record, structures whose foundations, when she traced the site surveys, were far deeper and far older than any temporary construction could account for. Structures that were not built for the fair, structures that were already there and were being demolished under cover of the fair's own planned deconstruction so that no one would notice the additional demolition happening alongside it. Back in the farmhouse, Clara has a drawing. It is one of Marta's, from a bundle dated 1934. It shows a building in exhaustive detail. A building with those distinctive columns, that roofline, those windows that are not quite semicircular, not quite pointed. Along the bottom of the drawing, Marta has written a notation in her precise handwriting. Seen from a train window, Chicago, 1906. This building was not in any guide I was ever given. It was between the buildings I was supposed to see. It was much taller than the buildings on either side of it. When I looked back, it was gone from view, blocked by the ordinary buildings, but I had seen it. I had remembered it from somewhere. I drew it as soon as I could find paper. Dr. Sorge, before she was forced to leave her position, had been trying to map the locations of the structures she found in the demolition records. She was trying to determine where they had been, where they had gone, and what connection they had to the broader pattern she was tracking across American cities. She never published her findings. She was given a choice: retract the paper she had submitted for peer review, or face a formal investigation into her research methods that would, she was told, certainly result in her termination regardless of outcome. She chose to retract. She has not spoken publicly about her research since 2008. She lives in a small town in rural Missouri. She has agreed, through Clara, to have a statement read here. Clara holds the paper. She reads it. What I found in the demolition records of the 1893 World's Fair is consistent with what I found in the records of a dozen other American cities between 1850 and 1930. There is a pattern of structures that predate the histories they are supposed to fit into. There is a pattern of their systematic removal. There is a pattern of the removal being obscured by other more legible events: fires, earthquakes, fairs, urban renewal, events that provided cover for a demolition that was already planned. I cannot tell you who planned it or why. I can tell you that it was planned. I can tell you that it was coordinated, and I can tell you that the records of what was removed are not in any archive I was able to access. They are somewhere. Someone has them. Someone knows exactly what those buildings were and where they came from, and why they had to be gone before a certain date. Clara folds the paper. She asked me to say one more thing, Clara says. She asked me to say that when she read about Marta's drawings, she drove to Kansas. She came here. She sat in this parlor, and she looked at the drawings for 3 hours. And at the end of the 3 hours, she said, "Your grandmother drew the buildings I found in the demolition records. She drew them from memory. She had never seen my research. She couldn't have seen it. It was never published." Clara looks at the window. She cried, Clara says. She stayed for dinner, and she cried twice, and she said she wished she had been braver. She said she wished she had published it regardless of what they threatened. She said somebody needed to have been brave enough. The prairie light is changing outside. It's going towards afternoon, that particular quality of plains afternoon that makes everything look simultaneously vivid and very far away. The sealed room is accessible now through a doorway cut in the cellar wall, a rough rectangle of limestone removed in pieces and stacked against the far wall. The room beyond is small, maybe 12 by 14 feet. Low ceiling, lower than the main cellar. The air inside is still different from the rest of the house, drier, cooler, carrying that specific mineral smell in a more concentrated form. The drawings are still in here, though Clara has photographed all of them and made archival copies. The bundles are stacked on shelves of rough timber that Marta built herself and bolted to the limestone walls. The shelves are precise. The bundles are organized. Marta built this room to last, and she organized it like someone who knew exactly what she was preserving, and for whom. Along the east wall, at eye level, there is a continuous drawing in graphite pencil that runs the full length of the room. Marta drew it directly on the limestone. It is a single image panoramic spanning perhaps 14 feet of wall space. It shows a city, or what might have been a city. It is impossible to say with certainty, because the proportions are not quite urban in any way we recognize, but not claustrophobic. The streets, if they are streets, are wide enough that the buildings on either side would have been perhaps 100 meters apart. There are structures that might be public squares or plazas, or something for which we don't have an exact word. Everything is connected to everything else by covered walkways, or bridges, or something that runs between the buildings at various heights, like threads in a web. It is beautiful in a way that is difficult to articulate. The beauty is not decorative, it is structural. The beauty comes from proportion and relationship, from the way each element of the composition relates to every other element in ratios that feel almost mathematical. Marta drew this on the wall of her hidden room at some point between 1911 and 2003, over 90 years. The graphite layers are different depths in different sections, suggesting she returned to it repeatedly, adding detail, refining proportion, getting it closer and closer to something she was trying to recover from memory. She never wrote a label or a location on this drawing. She didn't need to. She knew where it was. There is a measurement in this room that is difficult to explain. The room is sealed. It has been sealed for, at minimum, 90 years. There is no visible source of air movement. The temperature in the main cellar, measured in November, was 52 degrees Fahrenheit. The temperature in the sealed room is 68 degrees Fahrenheit, not warmer because of insulation. The walls are solid limestone, the same thermal mass as the cellar walls, not warmer because of equipment. There is nothing electrical in this room, not warmer because of biological activity. The room shows no evidence of mold or decomposition or any organic process that generates heat. It is simply, consistently, measurably 16 degrees warmer than the air 6 feet away, on the other side of a limestone wall. Clara noticed it on the first day. She thought it was her imagination. She borrowed a digital thermometer from a neighbor. She has measured it every month for 4 years. 68 degrees. Every month. Summer and winter. Day and night. The same temperature as a room where someone lives. A man named Dale Musgrave, who lives a mile down the road and has helped Clara with the maintenance of the farmhouse since her grandmother died, has been inside the sealed room many times. He is 68 years old and has lived in Rooks County his entire life. He is not a man given to speculation. He is sitting on an overturned bucket in the sealed room, looking at the panoramic drawing on the wall. "I don't know what to make of the temperature," he says. "I've been in a lot of old farm cellars in this county. Stone like this doesn't hold heat. It's a heat sink. It pulls heat away from you. But in here it's different. In here it feels like somebody was just in it." He looks at the drawing. "She was something else. Old Marta," he says. "I knew her from when I was a kid. She used to come to the door in the morning when the light was right and just stand there, looking out, like she was looking for something that might finally show up on the horizon." He is quiet for a moment. "One time I asked her what she was looking for," he says. "I was maybe 8 years old. She looked at me for a long time without saying anything. The things that should have been here, they should have been here, and they aren't. And I have been looking for them every morning for 60 years. He turns from the drawing and looks at the limestone wall. "I thought she meant family," he says. "I thought she was a lonely old woman, missing people who were dead. But now I've seen what she had in here, and I think she meant something else." He looks at the drawing again. "I think she meant this," he says. "All of this. Whatever this was, she was looking for it to come back." He stands up from the bucket. "Sometimes I think," he says, and then he stops. He tries again. "Sometimes I think the warmth in here is hers, that she put something of herself in here, along with the drawings, that she's still in here somehow, still warm, still looking." He doesn't say it like a mystical proposition. He says it like a man trying to describe something he has measured and cannot account for. He goes back upstairs without another word. In the bottom bundle of the westernmost shelf, the one Clara found last, there is a smaller reel-to-reel tape, wrapped in its own oilcloth, without the cotton twine that binds the drawings. On the oilcloth, Marta wrote a single instruction in her deliberate hand. "Play this one last." It was recorded in 1987, the same period as the other tapes, but on different stock with slightly different acoustic properties. The room where she recorded it was not the main farmhouse. The ambient sound is different, more resonant, with a slight echo that suggests stone walls very close to the microphone. She recorded it in here, in the sealed room. Clara plays it on the Wallensack, which she has brought downstairs and set up on one of the timber shelves. The tape starts with silence, a long silence, almost a full minute. Then Marta's voice, the same clear, deliberate voice, but in this recording carrying something beneath it, a quality of accumulated weight, like someone speaking from the other side of a very long journey. "If you are hearing this," Marta says, "then the room has been found. That means enough time has passed. I wasn't always certain enough time would pass before the wrong people looked the way I planned it. Then we are probably safe. She pauses. I am going to tell you what I remember of before. I have never told this in full, not even on the other tapes. The other tapes are for the trains and the children and the buildings, for the things that can be corroborated by other people. This is for the things that only I remember, and I have to say them before I go. Wind, somewhere near the microphone. The slight creak of old stone. Before the train, I was somewhere else. I was very young. I don't remember how I came to New York. I remember only that I had been somewhere before New York, and that the somewhere had a particular quality of light that I have spent my whole life trying to find again and never quite finding, though the Kansas plains come close in winter, when the light is low and very clear. She breathes slowly. The buildings in my drawings are real. I did not imagine them. I saw them. They were built to last, built in ways that meant they were still standing when I was a child, though they were already very old, the way children understand things without having language for them. That these buildings had not been built by the people who lived around them. They had been inherited. The people who lived around them lived in the buildings, the way people live in a house they've come to late. Carefully, trying not to break anything they don't fully understand, she pauses again. The tall people built them. I don't have another word. The tall people, taller than any person I have ever seen in my life here, but not so tall as to be frightening. Tall the way something is tall when it is simply made that way. Naturally, the way certain trees are simply taller than others without meaning to be unusual. They were the ones who built the buildings. And by the time I was a child, they were almost gone. The tape hisses softly. Almost gone, she repeats. Not entirely. Some remained, or their descendants remained. Smaller, but with certain characteristics that persisted. The ones the men with lanterns were looking for on the trains. The ones in the ledger. I knew what they were looking for because I knew what those characteristics meant. They meant ancestry. They meant connection to something that had been dismantled. Her voice, for the first time, changes quality. Tightens, slightly. I do not know if the men with lanterns were trying to protect what remained or trying to finish removing it. I have thought about this for 90 years. I am no closer to an answer. The children they took off the trains might have been given back something they had lost. Or they might have been disappeared so thoroughly that nothing remained at all. A very long silence. I drew the buildings every day so that the memory would not fade. Because if someone is supposed to know that they existed, they will need a witness. And I am the only witness I know of who is still here. She pauses one final time. This room is warm, she says. It has always been warm since I sealed it. I don't know why. I don't know if it is something I did or something that was always here. In this stone, in this piece of Kansas ground. But it comforts me. It feels like company. A sound. Not wind this time. Something else, more subtle. The kind of sound a room makes when it is simply itself, when nothing else is happening. I am going to stop now, Marta says. I hope whoever finds this understands. I hope they have the courage that I ran out of. I ran because I was 7 and afraid. By the time I was not afraid, it was too late to go back. There was nothing to go back to. The tape ends. The room holds the silence. 68 degrees. She was 7 years old when she ran from that train into the Kansas dark. She was carrying nothing except what she had come into the world with, including a memory she would spend the next 97 years carefully, painstakingly, obsessively preserving, because she understood that she was the only one who had it. She built this house with a sealed room because she was afraid. She filled the room with everything she knew because she was hopeful. She held both of those things at once for 104 years, and neither one canceled the other out. The human cost of the orphan trains is usually calculated in the conventional currency of loss. 250,000 children removed from their origins, most of them losing their names and their languages and their connection to wherever they had come from. The charitable organizations called this rescue. The critics called it forced assimilation. Both were describing something real. Neither was describing all of it. Because the official accounting of the orphan trains begins in the cities with the charitable problem of urban child poverty and ends with the rural families who received the children, with the placement records that show a child arriving and being absorbed into a new family and a new name and a new American life. The official accounting does not include the second ledger. It does not include the night stops, the men in good coats moving through train cars with lanterns, the 23 children that Marta counted, the 8 characteristics of Inge's list. It does not include where those children went. There are things we do not know, and may never know, about what happened on those trains and why. We do not know how many children were taken off at the unscheduled stops. We do not know if the second ledger still exists somewhere, in some archive that hasn't been identified, or one that has been identified and locked? Which organization or interest? What authority gave them access to children in federal transit across state lines? We do not know what they did with the children once they had them. We do not know if any of those children survived. We do not know if any of their descendants are alive, or if they are, whether they know what they came from. We do not know what the buildings in Marta's drawings were, what civilization built them, how long they stood, or what finally brought them down. We do not know if the demolitions of the 1890s and the early 1900s were the last of it, or only the most visible of it. We do not know if Dr. Sorge's unmapped structures are the only instances or simply the only ones she had time to identify before she was stopped. We do not know why this room is warm. That one particularly resists explanation. 16 degrees warmer than the cellar, 6 feet away, for a minimum of 90 years, with no measurable energy source. Limestone is a heat sink, not a heater. And yet here in the room where Marta kept everything she knew, the air holds at 68 degrees like a kept promise for a return that hasn't happened yet. Emil Hartley, when he came downstairs and stood in the doorway of the sealed room for the first time, said nothing for several minutes. He looked at the panoramic drawing on the wall. He looked at the bundles on the shelves. He looked at the woolen sock on the shelves and the tape that was still on the reel. "It's warm in here," he said finally. Clara said yes. He nodded slowly, the way old people nod, when something confirms rather than surprises. "My grandmother's kitchen was always warm," he said. "Even in winter, even when the stove was out. I always thought it was just her, the warmth she carried." He looked at the drawing again, at the city that should have been here, the buildings that Marta drew from memory over 90 years. "Maybe it is just her," he said. "Maybe that's what it is. The warmth that some people carry. It doesn't always go when they go." He stood in the doorway a little longer. Then he went back upstairs. The room held its temperature. Marta Voss died in March of 2003. She was 104 years old. She had lived in this farmhouse for 92 years and recorded and preserved and waited and looked every morning from the door at the winter prairie light that came closest to the light she was trying to remember. She left instructions in the oilcloth wrapping of the last tape. Find someone who isn't afraid. Find someone who will understand what this is and not be frightened by the size of it. Find someone who will ask the questions rather than hiding from them the way I sometimes hid from them. The questions are still here. The warmth is still here. The drawings are still here, thousands of buildings that should not fit in a single mind's memory. Rendered in graphite by a woman who ran from a train in the Kansas dark in 1906 and spent the rest of her very long life trying to understand what she had run from and what she had carried with her when she ran. The sealed room stands open now. It has a light in it, electric light, a work lamp that Clara brought down on an extension cord. But even with the lamp, even with the crude rectangle of new doorway letting in the cellar air, the room holds its temperature. It holds its warmth. Marta is not here, but something persists, some residue of whatever she was and whatever she carried and whatever she tried to tell us across the distance of 100 years and a sealed limestone wall. She wanted us to know. She spent a century making sure we could. The question she couldn't answer, the one she turned over for 97 years from the moment she jumped from that train until the moment she stopped breathing in the upstairs bedroom of this house. The question that she recorded and drew and preserved and sealed and finally released into the future, she couldn't see, is the same question she had at 7 years old, standing in the Kansas dark, watching the train lights diminish to the east. Where did they take the others? And are they still somewhere? And is the warmth in this room the answer, or only the echo of the question, preserved in stone the way certain things are preserved that have nowhere else to go? The door to the room stands open. The drawings remain, 68 degrees, waiting.